Ogburn and Mr. Conte for their assistance this evening. We would like to thank two of our neighborhood realtors, Judy Hanrahan and Betty Batty, who provided the wonderful refreshments in the back, which I see Jim Williamson already enjoying. And Brian Morrissey and Jim Haynes for their artistic and technical expertise to have the lovely banners in the back. All right, so a few ground rules in housekeeping. The bathrooms are out that door and to the left. As we go through, because we're reporters, so we have a lot of detailed, tough questions to ask. Nobody's getting away with their stump speech tonight. That's not going to cut it. So in aid of that, and because we want to get as many questions as possible, we're going to ask you to hold your applause till the end. So, if you want to jump up and down or signal your approval in the moment, that's great, but we need to keep rolling. I also want to let our gentleman know that the microphone will need to be passed as we progress, and it's a little bit sneaky. This microphone, when you turn it on, the light goes out. So keep that in mind if you don't want to have one of those microphone incidents where you don't think it's on, because there's no light on. So be advised of that. Okay, that's working? All right. Each candidate will be provided an opportunity to answer each question, and in the interest of time, we have a timekeeper, Glenn, in the first row there. He's going to let you know when you have 15 seconds and when your time is up. Now, some of these questions, most of them are going to be a 1.5 minute response. Some of them will have a 2-minute, and some of them will be lightning round questions with just a yes/no response. Now, for those, actually, you have the option, you have cards, yes, no, maybe, I don't know. And we'll just have you hold those cards up like Olympic judges so we can move quickly through those. Now, I know that having those time limits really sucks for you. I understand this. But I want you to remember, whichever one of you gets elected, keep this in mind, that when you get on the council, all of us citizens who stay up till the wee hours researching and crafting finely detailed testimony on a 350-page document that we've had 2 days to turn around, and we have to take time off from work to come and go and testify on, we only get 3 minutes. And when we send in our lovely written testimony and all of its details, appendices, and pictures attached, oftentimes the council staff person will just mark it down as no, yes, or against. So at any point that you get frustrated tonight, hold that frustration. Remember it. If you don't win this time, someday you're going to be serving somewhere, and remember that frustration when the time comes. All right, we would also like to solicit questions from the audience, and to that end, we have index cards for you to mark down on. That'll allow us to sort through and have a good variety of questions. Okay, and we've got some coming in already, that's great. If we have time, we also hope to have enough time at the end where we can recognize candidates that are in attendance besides the county council member or candidates, and also give you an opportunity for some more informal networking. So with that, please welcome our 5 candidates: Gerald North, Evan Bless, Tom Hucker, Christopher Barkley, and Jeffrey, how do we pronounce it? Towns. Okay. Towns. All right, like the river. Okay. All right. All right. Do you have any questions before we get started, gentlemen? All right. Well, I do. Not all of you are maybe very familiar with our community, so here's a few quick words about Four Corners. As you know, District 5 extends from downtown Silver Spring to Burtonsville and east to Tacoma Park. And our Four Corners community consists of the 5 neighborhoods that are at the crossroads of the district. And to many people in the county, Four Corners is just an intersection to get through on their way to the Beltway or downtown Silver Spring. So they may not know that we are a thriving, diverse community, more diverse than the county at large, of over 20,000 residents in a compact area with 10 schools, 6,000 students, numerous retail businesses, restaurants, parks, and houses of worship. This area was the first planned community in Silver Spring. As our master plan states, Four Corners is an area with a long history, from its beginnings as a rural crossroads to its first residential developments in the 1920s, to its present-day role as a mature, well-established suburban community. Despite the fact that our neighborhoods were divided up and separated by 11 Beltway ramps during the Beltway construction, and in subsequent years, properties continue to be taken in order to widen the roadways to accommodate growth from the north along the Route 29 corridor, our community still maintains many of the attributes that have characterized it for the last 77 years. These are attributes that county planning is striving to create in other areas. Our affordable, welcoming, walkable, environmentally friendly neighborhoods have a strong sense of community. In fact, many residents move within the neighborhood when they need larger housing because of this sense of community. Some original owners have children who are now raising their own children in the neighborhood they themselves grew up in. There are, however, concerns about threats to the sustainability of our community due to impacts from proposed projects, which will be the topic of some discussion this evening. So, welcome all, and let's get to the questions. All right, before we started, the candidates each, except for the last gentleman to arrive, drew a name from the hat to establish the order that we're going to go in for the first question, and which we'll roll from there. So this is going to go first to Terrell North. It's a 2-minute question. The County Council's principal responsibilities include setting the annual operating budget, which is now approaching $5 billion, and the capital improvement budget, as well as reviewing and approving all land use plans and zoning changes. Please tell us why you are the candidate best qualified to assume these responsibilities on behalf of District 5 and the county's 1 million plus residents.
I believe I'm the best candidate to assume those responsibilities for budgeting and land use because I already work in this community every single corner, beyond Four Corners to all the other corners of the district. I run 2 youth programs that work with over 550 youth in this community from Tacoma Park, Silver Spring, White Oak, and East County. I have been working with the ACLU of Maryland on a variety of issues affecting the young people in this county. Worked for 2 years to change school discipline regulations so that we could reduce disparities and suspensions among kids in this county. Been working in this community with activists on how do we get a BRT that works for the county. I'm a strong supporter of a north-south route that comes down New Hampshire Avenue to take cars off the road heading into DC. I don't think we need to move the curbs in this neighborhood and take away business from folks in this community, or use a dedicated lane in this particular community, because I think that would actually make traffic worse. So a big piece of it is running around talking to all of you on a regular basis, getting to know all of you on a regular basis. You've already seen the work that I've done in this community. If you go down Flower Avenue, you will see in the coming years $1 million worth of stormwater runoff mitigation that I helped bring to this community. If you've ever done any work with any of the at-risk youth in this area, then you know the work that I've been doing with Impact Silver Spring. Whether or not you know my name or not, you've been seeing the work that I've been doing here. And that's why I believe I'm the best person to really get a sense of what should be in our budget, what do we need to fund. For example, focusing on our after-school programs to help young people, that's something that I would do in this budget. Really listening to people in this community, and that's really the number one thing. I listen to the folks here. My opinions are based on talking with a lot of you. That's why I'm asking for your vote on June 24th. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Evan Glass, and Caroline, thank you for having us tonight. You and Jim do tremendous work for the entire county and community. So we're here with 3 of the 4 corners. I live in Indian Spring, right across the Beltway, and I think before the Beltway, we were probably considered the 4th corner. So I like this reunion. Thank you very much for having me. The reason I am the best person to be your next council member is because I'm the local leader who's been doing this for a decade. Not only am I president of the Indian Springs Citizens Association, right inside the Beltway, right down Colesville Road, recognizing that whatever happens on Colesville will affect me and my community as well. I started the South Silver Spring Neighborhood Association in downtown Silver Spring. When thousands of residents began moving to downtown Silver Spring, I helped form a community of apartment dwellers, making sure that we were safe, that development occurred that was good, and that we all moved forward together. And I'm also chair of the Silver Spring Citizens Advisory Board. And because Silver Spring is not a municipality, I have been appointed by the county council and county executive to provide management guidance on life here in Silver Spring, which includes 4 corners, all 3 of the 4 corners. And so I have been providing advice on development. Through my work on conservation in Montgomery, I helped get a tree bill passed here in Montgomery County, where for every 1 tree a developer cuts down, they have to plant 3 in the same area. And I'm also on the board of Safe Silver Spring, which is a community policing organization making sure that all of us in the 3rd Police District remain safe. And that remains true once the police station moves up from downtown Silver Spring up to White Oak. So between the transportation, the local civic engagement, my work with developers, making sure that good development occurs, I am the local leader who you need to represent you. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol, and thanks, Jim, and all the leaders of the 3 associations for putting this together. Again, my name is Tom Hucker. I live right down Colesville Road, nearby, with my wife and 2 young sons. I've lived there for a while. I mention that because I think have an enormous personal stake in how strong our public schools are, our parks, our rec centers, our hospitals, all the things that make this community great are, and how great they stay for the next 20 years. Because I want to make sure that they remain excellent, and we are facing the challenges of each of those areas together because of my young sons. I've been elected twice to represent most of District 5 in the Maryland General Assembly over the last 8 years. And I'm very proud of what the General Assembly's been able to do. I think you've all been following much of that. We managed to pass marriage equality and be one of the 7th state in the country to pass that. We ended the death penalty because of the enormous racial disparities and other problems in implementing that. We passed a groundbreaking gun safety law, which made Maryland one of the toughest states in the country on gun crimes. And I'm very proud of my individual record there. Passed over 40 pieces of legislation, including the most significant environmental cleanup bill of the last 10 years, which we call the Stormwater and Polluted Runoff Bill, but the Tea Party calls the rain tax. The most significant clean energy bill, which is the offshore wind turbine bill, which is going to produce enough clean energy to power most of the Eastern Shore and create thousands of green jobs. As well as groundbreaking bills to improve public health, to make sure every child that's born in Maryland is tested now for congenital heart disease because of legislation I passed. And to pass the first legislation in the country to require living wages for all our contract workers, lifting tens of thousands of families out of poverty because of that legislation. I'm the proven progressive leader who has had the most experience and the most success in a legislative environment. That's what this job is. That's why you should vote for me on June 24th. Thank you.
Let me first thank our sponsors. My name is Chris Barclay. I'm running for Council seat District 5. As I recollect, the question was about, given the council is responsible for the county's budget and its capital improvements program and land use issues, why would we be the best qualified to represent this district? As a member of the school board and somebody who's been on the school board for the last 7 years, what I deal with is half of the county's budget. The school budget is a significant portion of the budget, and it's the foundation for many of us in this community and one of the major concerns that we have. Why I've decided to run for the county council is because I've seen that in our schools, all of the issues that we have to deal with, the achievement gap, the fact that we have young people who come to school, in many cases, who are hungry, who need Maryland Meals for Achievement, who need breakfast in their classrooms, those issues cannot be solved simply in the schools. We need a county council that works with the school board. We need a county council that works with our state delegation and the federal government to bring the resources to this county and to coordinate resources in a way to make sure that we can solve these problems and address these issues. I'm the person who's been in this county, been in this district, working on our schools. We're in Pinecrest Elementary School. This elementary school, before it had the highly gifted program, I was one of the people that was working on making sure that this would remain a community school, even as folks came into the school from other places in the highly gifted program. I worked on Blair High School. I worked on opening Northwood High School. I've worked in this community for more than 10 years, actually it's more like 15 years, as an activist to really make sure that the foundation is strong, but we've got to go beyond that. We've got to really make sure that we have economic development here. And we've got to make sure that we can address the real problems that are happening in our communities. I come with elected experience. I've been elected twice to the school board. First time 240,000 votes, the second time 180,000 votes. I am known around the county and have a relationship and the temperament to work with other council members, to work with the delegation, to get the job done for District 5.
All right.
Why would I be the best to represent the community? Because I'm not a politician. I'm not a politician. I've never been elected to public office before. My name is Jeffrey Timms. I moved from Atlanta, Georgia in 2009, and Colesville, Route 29 was the first exit that I took from getting on in Atlanta, Georgia. When I arrived in this area, I said, what in the world is going on here? Why are all these children milling around? This is a recipe for disaster if we do not do something now. And I had just got off the highway. We stopped at McDonald's. We have a high problem with homelessness. I am a homeless advocate. I work with Montgomery County on the 100,000 Homes campaign. Every day that I ride up and down 29, we have different homeless individuals standing on the corner. We need to do something about that. There's a homeless camp right on the other side of Blair's high school wall. It is as efficient and effective as a home, as a house. The children aren't safe walking up and down there, so all of my other candidates and the ones that's running for office, they've been professionals at professionally confusing the community. So I will be the best one to go in and get the answers that we determined that we want. Because I don't have allegiances, I don't have alliances, I don't have cronies to look out for and to continue to sweep the dirt under the rug as if nothing is going on. It's time for answers. It's time to stop playing with the community. And I'm the one that will give the community the answers that we so desperately seek. None of these up here will give you the answers that you seek about the transit center because it may be one of their friends who's at stake. None of the ones up here will give you the answers that you need to know why the schools are suffering the way that it is because they run claiming that they were the professional elitists that do everything about schools. I have a nonprofit organization called Hope Restored. That's why, as my sign says stop, I'll be the one to represent the community the way that we want to be represented at the table in Rockville.
All right, if you would pass the mic back up to Mr. Glass, he will get to lead off on the next question. But first, we have a lightning round question. So get your cards ready. If elected as District 5 council member, you will be expected to respond promptly to constituent calls, letters, and emails. You will also be expected to keep your fingers on the pulse of District 5's diverse neighborhoods. So here is the lightning round question. Will you commit to returning all calls, letters, and email to either you or your office within 2 business days or 48 hours? Okay. Roll out. All right. Now, the question, which is a 1.5 minute one. How do you plan to keep abreast of the issues that impact our neighborhoods? Mr. Glass.
I live in the neighborhood. I might be right across the Beltway, but I know what's going on because, quite frankly, those of you who live in Woodmore know my name sometimes because I've been on your listserv. Because as chair of the Silver Spring Citizens Advisory Board, I help provide guidance and management for the council on what happens in Silver Spring and Tacoma Park. And I've already been on many community listservs reading up on the concerns of the community. And one of the things I think, quite frankly, is lacking in our county council and in our elected officials are the prompt responses Carol Ann just referred to. They don't know what's going on, and when you contact them, there's a void. And so quite frankly, I used to be a journalist at CNN. And so when I say I'll respond on Facebook or Twitter, I literally mean it. Tweet me now when we're done here, I'll respond to you. But the fact is, you need to be engaging. And that's what I have been doing. As president of 2 civic associations, I recognize that for communities to succeed, for communities to feel as whole, and for everybody to move forward together, we have to communicate. And so whether it's your website, whether it's a blog, whether it's emails, I've already been doing this. I pledge to continue doing this.
Thanks, Carol. I think we'll all probably give largely the same answer to this. I am very plugged in. I've ran a nonprofit advocacy organization for many, many years, and that's one reason I'm very plugged in with the nonprofit community and all the folks with their feet on the ground and touching the pulse of the community every day. It's why one reason I've been endorsed by 25 different organizations that represent the broad coalition of diversity that this community represents. I'm on many, of your listservs. If you're a member of this civic association, good Lord, Dan. I've been to your civic association. If you remember the other 2, even though I don't represent you in the General Assembly, I've come to visit your civic association, which gives you a sense of how responsive I'll be. Many of you know my work going after PEPCO and driving up accountability for PEPCO. Many of you know that I was on your listservs with my cell phone, calling PEPCO vice presidents directly to get your lights back on when your lights were out 2 years ago. I'm the only member of the General Assembly that has their cell phone on their card, even though that violates the rules of the printing office. And I had to come up with a euphemism to have it on there because I want to be so close to the ground, so responsive to communicate to constituents. That's been my track record in the past, and it's going to be even more my track record on the council. Thank you.
So I think Tom is right in terms of us all giving similar answers, but one of the things is we're in this community, and one of the things that we have to do is be out in our community. I've spent a lot of time in our schools, in our churches, in our neighborhoods, talking to people about what's going on in their neighborhood, and I think we have to continue to do that. One of the difficult things at the county council and being elected at the Board of Education is really making sure that we get out to the communities as opposed to always expecting folks to come to us. As you were talking about, yes, this is your pound of flesh, making sure that we get a minute to answer, because we do distill all of that information that people have to go over way too quickly into a 3-minute bite. We need more opportunities to come into the community, and I would use all of the opportunities I can. Coming into community association meetings, that would be helpful. I will continue to be talking to neighbors all of the time. Being on the listserv is fine, but I believe in face-to-face. That's what really makes the difference. We need to be talking to each other face-to-face, and we also need to be talking to other communities. I think one of the things that we don't see a lot of times is neighbors talking to each other in different communities about similar problems. We need really to be working on that, and that's a dialogue that needs to happen because collectively we all live in Montgomery County and we're all part of District 5.
For the sake of the room, can you please repeat the question?
Yes, the question is, how do you plan to keep abreast of the issues that impact our neighborhoods?
I will come and have dinner with whomever invites me. Mr. Barkley, me too, but I will definitely come and have dinner. Listen, when George Leventhal endorsed Ms. Jill Orbenspouse for school board, he talked about the school parents calling up to Carver and not getting a response. He was responsible for that, no response. So do you think that he'll take that no response attitude and bring it to the community where he has more responsibilities and give you the response that he just told you that he'll give you? I don't think so. Mr. Hucker just said that he had his phone number on his business card, which is a violation of the law. So do you want somebody that has willingly sat here in front of you and told you that he violates laws to come and believe that he's going to come and give you an answer that you want? I don't think so. I walked this neighborhood yesterday, and I met a lot of the neighbors. And I promise you that I understand the importance of a common unity, making up a community, that if you call me, I will be there. I'm an old country boy, and I believe in knowing the neighbors. I'm not running for this office for a paycheck. I'm running this office so that you will have the answer that you demand. I think that $140,000 is too much for anybody to make anyway to represent somebody if they really love to do it. If they're professionals at what they do, why don't they stay where they are? The school board needs Chris Barkley. The House of Delegates needs Tom Hucker. Stay where you are.
All right, pass the mic back up to Mr. Hucker, please.
I should go back. I didn't get attacked just now. Maybe I'm not working hard. So, go back to first off, stay in touch with the community, right? My home number is 301-588-1312. 301-588-1312. And the reason I say that, I don't mean that as a joke. I really, like tomorrow, I'm going to be working with some senior citizens on some of their issues because one of the members of the group called me up and said, Terrell, do you know anything about this? And they have public benefits is something that I do know a lot about, so I can help with them on that. But what I'll do to help communities, honestly, is clone Carol Land. And what I mean by that is, when I worked on the Hill for two members of Congress, we had a staffer in our office who had the job of helping communities form civic associations. So as a council member, I will have a person in my office who has the job, who will go through the Community Law Institute in Baltimore and train them on how to form civic associations. The reason why I formed 2 in Tacoma Park for neighborhoods that I didn't live in, because I saw those communities had a need. So one of the ways that I think we can get that done on a larger scale, because really, you're doing your job. The challenge that we have, especially in this diverse community, is that folks are so hard hit. There's no support. Like you said, you're taking time off from work to make this happen. A lot of folks just haven't been willing to do that. And I think the way that you make that happen is that you form one is an Office of Tenant Advocate, which will focus specifically on tenant associations. We'll take impact fees from developers to pay for that. The second is, again, my own staff person who can work on forming neighborhood associations and providing support to those organizations, and I'll stop with that.
All right. When the winner of this District 5 election takes office, some of the Four Corner neighborhoods will have had 6 different individuals representing them as their district council member in the last 6 years. The voters of District 5 will choose one of you to represent them for 4 years. So in that line, we have another lightning round. Grab your cards. Will you commit to finishing all 4 years of the term if you're physically able to do so? All right. Okay, now we have the 1.5-minute question. Recently, the city of Tacoma Park had a sudden vacancy on their council, and within 2 months held a special election, a runoff, and a swearing-in. Should county residents be provided with the ability to vote for someone to fill any vacancies on the county council, an office of county executive, or should those vacancies be filled by individuals who are selected by other council members? Should the county charter be changed to require that an election be held if a vacancy occurs with more than 6 months remaining in the term? Mr. Hucker.
Yes. I'm a big believer in democracy, small d democracy, and I'm a big believer in special elections. I wish participation, I think we all wish participation were greater in every election, especially in special elections. The argument advocates give why we should have appointments to vacancies and not special elections is because the turnout in special elections is low. Well, the turnout in the appointment was 8. I haven't yet seen a special election that has a lower turnout than 8. So I would have favored a special election to replace Ms. Irvin, and I would absolutely favor changes to the charter to replace vacancies in the future.
Interesting question. given I was appointed to the Board of Education when Ms. Irvin went to the county council. So I won't be self-serving and say no. I would have to look at it. I'd have to think about that a little bit more, to be honest. I think that the issue with the special election that is technical is the cost of the election, but there is the other side, which I think is the cost to democracy, because when you appoint someone like this, they are not responsible to the community. And that's a very difficult situation, and I don't bemoan the intentions of Ms. Branson, but just simply the position that she's been put in because she has been appointed is a challenging one. She does not have to be accountable to the community at a certain level, you know, and that is difficult. And I think it's difficult for the citizens of this district to have someone. And I think to your earlier point in terms of the fact that we've had so much representation, that's why we need stable leadership here. We really do, and we need to be looking at how to make that happen and how to have somebody who's going to be in that seat who's committed to representing the district. I think that's what it's really about. So I'd really have to work through. I tend to want to go with yes, but I would not want to make an answer and say yes on the spot. I'll be very honest with you. I think this needs to be thought through.
Needs to be thought through because there may be an appointment that he may be able to seek later on. So he's not going to give you a yes answer. But absolutely. If you voted that person into office and they're no longer in office, you need to be able to vote someone else that represents your interests into office. Plain and simple. From what I've been observing throughout the county as I've been at the district, as I've been canvassing, we have a highly intelligent group of people in District 5. I believe that if you have the opportunity to vote, you will show up. And not worry about how much it costs to have effective representation that you are proud of. They held their card up and said, yes, they'll stay for 4 years, but we got, you know, it speaks for itself. He's leaving now. He probably held his card up 6 years ago when he said they asked him the same question. So when you want somebody that's going to shoot you straight, that's what you get with me. So do I think that we should have a special election? Absolutely, but this is what we also have to do. You also have to have somebody that's willing to let you know what the loopholes are. Because they knew that she was going to resign back in November, but she held out long enough to bypass the date that a special election would be mandatory, which gave them the ability to appoint.
So I am unequivocally in support of special elections. And I have to say, Kate Stewart in that election in Tacoma Park, she's a member of my community advisory board for Make Community United People. It's the youth program I run with 150 at-risk youth in Tacoma Park. So I'm glad that she got elected. Not saying she's endorsed me, I don't know what she's doing with this race. But the previous special election in Tacoma Park, I actually helped a friend of mine from college run for that. When you talk about his name is Jared Smith. So when you talk about low turnout, and he has endorsements. And so when you talk about low turnout in special elections, in that special election, we actually doubled turnout from the previous regular election in that neighborhood in Tacoma Park. So it's not just a question of me supporting special elections. Part of it is, and the reason why we doubled turnout, that neighborhood was a lot like this entire district. We had black people, white people, Latinos, Asians, all kinds of human beings living near each other, but not really interacting with one another. So we ran a campaign that was focused on going to every neighborhood, banging on every door, or knocking on every door, talking to all sorts of people, getting to know everyone. And that's why we had a higher turnout than the previous two elections in that neighborhood. And that's what we really need in this on this council seat. Someone's going to go to this neighborhood and also give East County and White Oak the same attention that we're all giving you right now. So the thing is, that's why I support special elections, because I think it's also a little bit cheaper to actually run a special election sometimes. So the point is, I think the key is us fighting, us going out into the community and getting people excited about this, whether it's a special election or a regular election. It's all about the community.
On its face, the question seems straightforward. As a former journalist, I want to promote and encourage open democracy, good government. But the question's a little more complicated than that. Because right now, the current law is any term that is open within 1 year of the election is selected by the council members. And at the face, I think that's good. Because otherwise, if we have a special election within a short period of time, you know who's gonna win? The one with the most money. That's it. The one who's gobbled up money from special interests, whomever they may be. And so by having a caretaker, someone who pledges to protect and serve the people without running, you're allowing this democratic process to occur. And that's why I'm the only one on this table who actually went to the county council earlier this year and testified in support of campaign finance reform. The council right now is debating whether or not to allow publicly financed campaigns where politicians don't have to grovel for money and matches are made up to $150, 7 times that, 6 times that, making the power of the people more important than the power of special interests. So in thinking back to this question, we have to weigh what a special election at a drop of a hat or a snap of a finger really means. At first blush, I think it means the person with the most special interest money will win, which doesn't necessarily benefit the community.
All right, pass it down to Mr. Bartley. But before we give him his question, we also have another lightning round. It's widely believed by citizen activists that when the interests of developers come into conflict with neighborhood, environmental, and other community interests, it is the interests of the developers that seem to prevail. Do you agree with that assessment, yes or no? Okay. All right. Now, we have a series of questions relating to participation and involvement. The county's proposed bus rapid transit, or BRT plan, proposes to create dedicated bus lanes along Colesville Road, University Boulevard, Georgia Avenue, and 7 other major state roads. In the past 2 years, there have been 2 master plans, the BRT and White Oak master plans, and a zoning code rewrite conversion proposed that would directly impact the future of the Four Corners area. Historically, the county has done inclusive, community-based master plans and did the Route 29 neighborhood master plans all at the same time. But in the case of those 2 new master plans and the zoning rewrite, Four Corners was excluded from meaningful participation. All right, that's the background. Here comes the question. When it comes to land use decisions and growth policy under the current system, do you think ordinary citizens and the civic community in general have the same access to the county planning board and staff, the county council, and other decision makers as the development community has? And I'm sorry, I gave you the wrong order. That's a card question. Give us the cards for this one. I'm going to read it to you again. When it comes to land use decisions and growth policy under the current system, do you think ordinary citizens and the civic community in general have the same access to the county planning board and staff, the county council, and other decision makers as the development community has? Yes, no, maybe. All right. And it's the follow-up that will start off with Mr. Bartley. If not, how do you propose to level the playing field?
So, I have a good friend in DC who does a lot of work on land use issues, and his job is actually to do the work of bringing the community together with the developers and whatever government to have those conversations. And while I may not engage that particular individual, I think there's a lot of work that Montgomery County needs to continue to do to bring communities together with county government and community associations to make sure, in fact, that we can even the playing field. And it's really about representation. Look, the developers are professionals, so they have folks who are paid to lobby and to do that work. Community members are not going to have that. But that's the role of county government and your representative to help make sure that we can facilitate those conversations. Those conversations need to be had. I know that a lot of folks in this room are really concerned about BRT, and they're really concerned about dedicated lanes. Well, there are real conversations that need to be had between the folks who are advocating for BRT, the folks who are the experts, and county government and the community to figure out what is going to be in the best interest of the whole community. That's a tough conversation to have, but it's one that's necessary. And if we don't have it, I think we will continue to have a very uneven playing field. My responsibility as a facilitator, as county council person, is to help make those conversations happen so that folks know that they're represented.
Hi, my name is Jeffrey. And I was the only one that held up a yes when they all held up no's. Because I know that we have the same access to the same information if we don't stop. If we don't stop, the developers, they go day in and day out, day in and day out, day in and day out, demanding that they see the member that represents the area that they want to put a development in, and that persistence is what gets them the meeting. But oftentimes, when you have a failure of a representative, either at the school board level or at the state delegation level, you don't know how to access your state representative or your school board member to get a hand in getting access to the information that you desire. So the community has the same ability to access the same information if you show the same persistence as what big dollar developers have. We have a lot of individuals that stay home and operate home-based businesses. In that time that you're at home, you can go to the community and you can galvanize, and you bring them back with you and say, we demand to have access. It's not always about the money that gets you the access, it's about the persistence. But sometimes the developers have realized that a little bit of money, my father was sick one time and he was receiving get well cards. And he told the congregation, he was a pastor, he said, you know, it's good to get all the get well cards, but it's awfully good, it's better when I'm able to have something that falls out of it. And so the developers have realized that in order to get the meetings, there's always something that can fall out of the car.
Okay, please pass the mic back up.
I think the way that we level the playing field, honestly, is coalition building, and that's my expertise. That's what I do professionally, have done for about 15 years now. At Impact Silver Spring, specifically, we organized a group of tenants who wanted to protect their home, their apartment buildings that they lived in because it was affordable housing naturally occurring where they lived. And we brought them together with the homeowners in the same area off Georgia Avenue to protect their homes. The tenants didn't even speak English, they had to testify in Spanish. But we still brought that coalition together. I mean, when I'm talking to them, I have to wear headphones and a little microphone so that I'm able to communicate with them. But we brought a group of middle-class homeowners and low-income renters together to fight to preserve their neighborhood. And that's what county council's job is, period. I learned that when I worked on the Hill. We had a youth program serving 75,000 kids across the country that the Bush administration zeroed out. And I worked really hard with a bunch of Democrats to try to get that money back, and we failed. The next year, came back, got a bunch of Republicans who I found who had that same youth program working in their district because it was in 50 districts across the country. And suddenly we had a bipartisan coalition, Republicans and Democrats working together to preserve after-school programs for 75,000 kids across America. And doing that, I learned from failing and then getting together and wiping the dust off and then bringing people together to make things happen. And that's what I will do as your county council member.
As someone who's been president of 2 civic associations, it is doable, but it's hard, which is why the work of Carol Ann and Jim and Brian Morrissey and others in this room is valuable. And you have to appreciate the work and time that they give because they don't get paid for it, as she prefaced before. And so what we need to do is have people who've already been doing this. And as president of 2 civic associations, as I said, I have been doing this. In downtown Silver Spring, I worked with developers on how to put good projects in. And sure, we could go around the community, hop in my car, and I'll show you bad projects. And what makes them bad? They didn't talk with the community. Now, there are plenty of good projects because they sat at the table and they were good business people who wanted the longevity of the community to be the best it could be. So not all development is bad, but it's working with the community and knowing how to work with the developers, work with park and planning. And there's a problem in some of our Silver Spring neighborhoods. If you go down Piney Branch, there's a restaurant, Gill's Restaurant. And they are having a problem with fighting at night, with underage prostitution and a bunch of other things. And the reason I mention this is because their liquor license was just up. And the community tried to fight it. But the Department of Liquor Control let them renew their license. And what this means is that the problem of communities addressing their concerns in county government is more systemic than simply development. And it's something that we need to fix.
We need a planning board. You're absolutely right, Carol, that you didn't answer the question, but I bet you say yes. We need a planning board that is an impartial umpire that calls balls and strikes fairly and looks at a project and says, is this good for the community? Is this in the public interest or not? And that's not what we have. Too often we have and I think it's reflected in the staff culture there, but that is a product of the planning board, the appointed the culture that comes down, the instructions that come down from the planning board itself, which comes from the county council. We have a culture of, oh, you have an idea? Well, let's figure out how to get it built. And no ideas are bad. We might want to make some tweaks, but no ideas are bad. And we need an impartial umpire that calls balls and strikes fairly. So what do we change? One, we should get rid of this idea that we have a set-aside seat for developers. That makes no sense at all. You don't have a set-aside seat for insurance executives in Congress. You have lobbyists. And developers should represent themselves in front of the planning board, not behind the planning board. Second, we should have citizen activists on the planning board that represent the whole county and don't have conflicts of interest. We also should make it a nonpartisan body. There's 2 set-aside seats for Republicans. Good Republicans and bad Republicans, just like Democrats. Partisanship has no role in planning. I put in a bill to make it a nonpartisan body, and the planning board fought that. And finally, we need much greater transparency. The special interests are always in the room first, getting their way. I spent 4 years on the Land Use and Ethics Committee of the General Assembly, 4 years as the chair of the Bi-County Committee overseeing the planning board. I have the most experience, and I'm going to do the best job to make sure that happens on the council. Thank you.
Yes, you're right, pass it down to Mr. Town. Now, happily, we actually have a couple questions now about the planning board. And the first one will be a card question, and then the next one will be a 1.5-minute question where Mr. Thames will lead off. So if you're elected and serve a full 4-year term, the county council in that time could make as many as 4 appointments to the county planning board. So here's your lightning round question. Do you think the civic community and ordinary citizens are adequately represented on the board? Okay. In evaluating those individuals who apply to serve on the board, what criteria would you use in deciding who you would vote for? Mr. Towns, lead us off.
I will look at the past history of their testimonies. If they've been before the council numerous times throughout the years, I would see that as someone that's engaged, someone that's in tune with the community, and someone that really cares about being upfront, fair, and not shameful of having a differing opinion than the rest of the people. One that comes to mind, and I know she's not here, but Eileen Finnegan. I don't know if you know Eileen or not, but she has the ability to say that she's been there in the trenches, making sure that they have the answers in the community that we deserve and require. And so that would be one of the criteria that I would look for. And also just to make sure and see the integrity that the individual brings to the table. Because it's not about that neighborhood that that individual represents, but it's about the district as a whole, making sure that all minds and all ideas are represented and accounted for. So it's integrity, honor, courage, and commitment is what I would look for.
All right, if you pass the microphone back up, please.
I think that the real issue is, Tom has a good point. We shouldn't be setting aside these seats based on Republicans or Democrats. We should be setting aside seats based upon representation in the community. So I think that there is what we ought to do is have a representative from Citizens Advisory Boards. My wife happens to be the vice chair of the Silver Spring Citizens Advisory Board. I've done a lot of things with this guy. So we should also have a representative from civic associations. I mean, I think that's really what the answer is. It's about making sure that there are enough representatives from different aspects of the community, because we know that the developers are going to spend the money. We know that certain members of council are going to be bought and paid for by developers. So they're going to have the representatives. So it's time that the regular community has representatives on these different boards as well.
I think it all goes back to communication, openness, and transparency, quite frankly. Because what is lacking, not only in park and planning, but as I mentioned, in the Department of Liquor Control, and we can go on and on about all the different departments, the Department of Permitting Services, the Department of Transportation. How many projects are occurring around us without proper conversations, without proper notification, without any buy-in from the community? I mean, how often does WSSC come in, do some pipe work, and then all of a sudden Washington Gas comes in, or the week before it was the Department of Transportation possibly building some sidewalks or putting some new gutters in? This happens so often because there is not enough conversation between the different agencies with the community. And so we certainly, from the park and planning perspective, need to increase the participatory process. And yes, it is very hard when the development industry have people on staff who are constantly there, and we, as residents, are relying on civic association leaders and other good citizens to speak for their community. But this is a broader problem, and we need people who are willing to engage, willing to always keep their doors open, and willing to talk with the community.
What do we need? The first criteria is we need somebody that is trained in planning. Too often we've had people on the planning board that don't know the details, don't understand the details. We've had cabinet secretaries in Maryland who are not planners for many, many years until Governor O'Malley appointed Rich Hall, good friend of mine, cabinet secretary for planning. He's been the first planner there, and the place is completely different because he has professional training and he's not he's not left behind because he understands the details so well. Second, we need somebody with the same values as the community, somebody with a strong backbone who can stand up to all the special interest pressure you get in that job and isn't just seeking to make everyone happy. But third, we need somebody who's trained as a consensus builder and a collaborator and who really seeks and values community input and won't let a project go forward until there's consensus for it.
So criteria, I think obviously I agree with Tom that it's very important that whoever is on the planning board has experience with land use issues. One thing that just is not acceptable is folks using these offices to move their career up. And I think we've seen a lot of folks who come into office and they're looking for office simply to move to the next office. That's just not acceptable. So one thing I would say is experience with land use. Another one is, how do you have experience working in our community and with our community? That's important. And something no one has said or I've heard said is the issue of diversity. How do you deal with diverse communities? Do you have experience working with diverse communities? I think it is critical, given the way Montgomery County is changing, that we have folks representing us who truly can represent the diversity of our community. And that doesn't mean that they have to be a person of color. What it does mean, though, is that you should have experience working with many different groups of people. That's critical. I think that's very critical. The other piece is we have to have the ability to play in the sandbox. The reality is, and this is similar to what Tom said, but the reality is you have to be a consensus builder. You have to be somebody who is willing to work with other people and bring folks